welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name's Angela. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Rainbow Ange, and we also have a Facebook page and an Instagram account for my yarn shop, which is called Yarn and Yarns, and we're based in South Wales in the UK, just outside of Cardiff, in a little town called Penarth. First off, I just wanted to say that I have been away for much longer than I intended. We had a busy few weeks getting ready for a trip that we are currently on. So if anyone is joining me again, you'll notice that my background is slightly different, and at the moment I'm on the other side of the world to where we usually record and live. So I'm on a fantastic trip at the moment to New Zealand, and I was hoping to record this outside, and I got myself all set up. We're staying in a little house at the moment at Lake Tekapo, which is on the South Island in New Zealand, and it's got a lovely little veranda, and you can see the mountains and a little bit of the lake in the background when we're out on the veranda. I just took all my stuff out there and it started teeming down with rain. So I'm sat in the living area in the house with all my stuff on the table. It will probably be a fairly short video. I thought we're having quite a lazy day today. We have been out and about exploring. If I just give you a quick bit of background on our trip, James's sister lives here. She actually lives up in the North Island in Auckland, and she got married last week. So we flew in for the wedding, and while she is off on honeymoon, we then flew down to the South Island, stayed with a friend of ours, and we're now doing a bit of travelling around the South Island before we fly back up to Auckland at the weekend and rejoin the family for a few days before we come back to the UK. So yeah, I was hoping to record outside, show you a bit of the view, but it started teeming down with rain, and this is the first rainy day that we've had. We had one day where we had a couple of little showers, but in the main it was sort of sunny, cloudy weather, but today is really quite grey out there. But after I finished recording, I might insert a few little snippets of both where we are at the moment and perhaps a few photos of some of the places that we have been, if anyone's interested. Although if you do follow me on Instagram, then you'll have seen a few of those photos and things already. So yeah, that's where we are. We're having the most amazing time. The landscape here is just, yeah, it's just something else. It's a long old flight to get here from the UK. We were in the air for something like 25 hours, I think, altogether. And it's not a cheap airfare either. Obviously we're here for family, but if you ever get a chance to visit New Zealand, I can highly recommend it. Anyway, 3 or so minutes of waffle and let's get on to the yarny talk. I thought I would take the time to record this while we're having our more relaxed day, just to show you some of the projects that I bought to work on, because of course can't leave home without knitting. And also I have acquired a couple of things, not too much, and I don't usually do massive acquisitions, but I thought, you know, different country and some exciting things, so I thought I'd share those as well. So without further ado, I'll start with the projects that I'm working on. So I probably packed more projects to bring with me than I did clothes. Okay, that's probably a slight exaggeration. I did bring a lot. I was a little bit worried about knitting on the plane. Not worried about it, but I've heard many stories of people having their needles confiscated and things like that. I've never had a problem, but you never know. So I overcompensated and I bought a couple of projects, and I also popped a crochet project in my hand luggage as well, because I thought if my knitting needles get confiscated, then I could do a bit of crochet. I was also worried that we weren't able to pre-book our seats for the flights here, so I was concerned that if I wasn't sat next to James, thought crochet would be a bit less how can I describe it, roomy, does that make sense? So obviously with knitting I'm going to have, or the way I knit, I'm going to have both my arms going, etc, etc, and I thought with crochet it's a much smaller movement, so I thought I'd also pack the crochet for that reason. If I ended up sitting next to somebody other than James, if we got separated for the flights, then I would still be able to work on something, and I wouldn't be potentially elbowing some poor stranger who's, you know, trying to sleep on a 12-hour flight. Now, having waffled on about crochet, I don't actually have my crochet project with me. When we flew down to the South Island, I left some of my bits and pieces up in Auckland at James's sister's place. We're here for about 10 days, so I didn't think there was much point in bringing everything with me. What I have brought with me though is, of course, a sock. Can't leave home without a sock. So this sock I actually started not long before we left the UK. I think the Monday before we flew out, I took a trip to the cinema to watch The Shape of Water, which is a fantastic film, and although I'm a little bit behind with the news, I believe it's just won a ton of Oscars. And I needed a vanilla sock to knit on in the cinema, so I cast on a new yarn that we had in the shop, and this is Stylecraft Boho. I think the colour is Neva, but I am not sure, Neva. I don't have the yarn label with me, but it's a really fun self-striping, self-patterning yarn, and this is how it's working up so far. So as you can see, I am a good way through the first sock. I'm actually on the toe decreases for sock number 1. So yeah, it won't be long before that's finished, and I've got a little aim to maybe finish these socks while I'm here. We're here for another 10 days or so, so I think that is potentially doable. I've put in some waste yarn for a heel. The only thing that I have just realised as I come down towards the end of my toe is that I didn't pack any. I was trying to not bring too much stuff, so I didn't bring any tape measures, needles, other than knitting needles. So I have no darning needle to Kitchener my toe. In a couple of days we're travelling down to Queenstown, and there's a little town called Arrowtown just outside of Queenstown, and I've been told that there is a little yarn shop in Arrowtown, so I could potentially pick up a darning needle there. Or I do have some DPNs with me for another project, so I'm thinking I might go with a 3 needle bind off. I've never done that for a sock before, but you never know. I'll let you know how that all pans out when I get there. So yeah, really fun self-patterning yarn, and I'm knitting them on my Knit Pro Zings 2.25 millimeters, and Magic Loop, which is my preferred method. Also, the other thing to say about this, which I think is going to be really fun, is that, and this hardly ever works out, that I'm actually going to be ending fairly near the end of a pattern repeat where I start my sock, so there won't be too much waste yarn for me to wind off. I started in this part of the pattern repeat, so just where the blue turns to the orange, and I'm finishing here, so I've got 1 stripe of blue left in the pattern repeat before I get back to my start, so I think I should be able to finish the toe with that. But it doesn't really matter. I usually use any wind off if I have to wind off a huge bit. If I'm trying to match the socks, I usually use that for heels if I'm doing an afterthought heel. And the reason I like to do an afterthought heel on a self-patterning is so it doesn't disturb the striping or patterning effect of the sock on the front. So yeah, that's project number 1. That was actually a last minute throw in the case. I thought this would be a good thing to take out and about with me while we were travelling around. We've hired a car here in the South Island. I'm doing a lot of driving though, James doesn't drive, so I've had less out and about knitting time than I thought, but you know, I'm glad that I bought this. It's been quite a nice mindless knit for if we've been hanging around at our accommodation in the evenings. And perhaps I'm too tired to work on anything else. So yeah, that's project number 1. Project number 2 that I brought with me is my Dern jumper. which is I haven't bought any pattern books or anything, I've just done a photocopy. It's a really basic, I think I can probably show you that without showing anything, really basic jumper. I'm actually knitting the V-neck version, which is here on the other side, and it's knit from Rowan Valley Tweed, and it's a gorgeous orange, burnt orange colourway. I'm so in love with this colour, it's unreal. The reason I bought this, because obviously a jumper is a pretty big project, but it's very lightweight yarn. It's 4-ply tweed yarn, and they're 50-gram balls, and it takes quite a long time to knit an inch, so I thought this would be a good project to keep me going if, for instance, we did, you know, have lots of rainy days and we were out and about less than we thought. So this is my back. It's a bit scrunched because it's been in the bag, but this is the progress I've made on the back. So this was one of the projects that I cast on for my 12 cast-ons of Christmas. If you watch my previous videos, you'll know what I'm waffling on about. But I think on the first day that I cast this on, I managed to get the rib done and maybe a couple of rows of the stockingette. So yeah, I've made a reasonable amount of progress on the back now, which is great. I did a little bit of knitting of this on the plain. I also knit on this by the pool at the estate where the wedding was held. So yeah, this is going to hold lots and lots of fun memories when it's done. So usually I don't bother with waist shaping and things like that, but I thought I'd do it for this project. So I finished all of the waist decreases. You won't really be able to see that, and I've knit a small panel at the smallest stitch count. So now I'm going to be doing a section of increases, and then after that it's just plain stockinette until we get to the shoulder. So yeah, I think the main of this is knit on 3.25mm needles, and I bought my Knit Pro Symphonies. So I thought these would be a good one for travelling on the plane, because there's not much there to be picked up on any scanners, you know, no big metal tip, and also I put them on an interchangeable cord. So when we were going through security, I made sure that I had the stoppers on the cord, so if for any reason security did decide that they wanted to confiscate any needles, then I would have hopefully been able to retain my knitting, and maybe the needles just would have been taken. And I've also packed a spare pair of 3.25mm needles in my suitcase, so if that did happen, then I would have some backups. So yeah, I think that's all there is to say. I probably went overkill. I was halfway through a ball of yarn when I packed this. I wound up I think 2 others, but I've hardly really made any impact, so I probably bought a ball extra than I needed, but better to be safe than sorry, eh? Right, the last project that I have with me, that I've been working on, was again another last minute addition. So the morning that we flew out, I popped into the shop just to do a couple of last minute admin and just to make sure that Sam had everything she needed to manage the shop while I was gone. And we had a delivery in that morning of one of the yarns that I ordered when I went to the trade show, Stitches in Birmingham, and I couldn't resist grabbing a couple of balls and bringing a last minute project with me. So this beautiful yarn, let me just show you the skeins, is a brand new yarn to our shop at Yarn and Yarns, and it's a beautiful 100% wool yarn, 100% British wool, spun and dyed in Yorkshire, and it's from Bar Amu, and it is pip colour work. Can you see that? And it's absolutely stunning. It's very reminiscent of something like Jemison's and Smith's, like Spindrift or 2-ply. Perfect for colour work. So I grabbed a ball in 2 colours. So this colour is funnily named Brass Band, and then the grey colour is called, what are you called? Crucible. So Crucible is that lovely light grey. So I picked a project from the Knitting in the North book, which I own. I can't remember offhand who it's by, sorry, but it was a lovely book full of lots of colour work accessories. I think there's a couple of jumpers in there as well. And there is a pair of wrist warmers, and I think they're called the Arrow wrist warmers. Again, please bear with me, I don't have all of the books and things with me. I'm keeping this little project in this gorgeous DPN cozy that my lovely friend Erin sent me. So here I am, and I haven't touched this since I got off the plane, but I've made a fair bit of progress on the first mitt. Just trying to make sure I get all of the needles out of the way. So yeah, here we are so far. I think you can just about see that arrow pattern starting to come through. I turn it around to the other side. It's a bit tricky to see. These aren't the most high contrast yarns. There's a white sort of colour which I probably should have chosen, because the grey is sort of fairly tonal with the... Yeah, I think you can see the colour work starting to come through. Obviously the stitches will even out a bit with the blocking process as well. Yeah, so these are on 3mm DPNs. I don't usually like working with DPNs, but again I thought these were a good one for coming through security, as they're my Knit Pro Symphonies, so wooden needles that hopefully wouldn't be deemed as some sort of offensive weapon as we went through the scans. So yeah, that's my progress on the first cuff. I think I shall work a little bit more on these over the next few days, and again hopefully I might get these finished. They're really quick. I probably worked for maybe an hour and a half or so on the plane on that, and it's a fair way through being done. So yeah, that's that project. So that's it for the projects that I've been working on while I've been travelling. As I say, I have one crochet project, but that's back in Auckland, so I can't show you anything related to that one yet. So the last things I have to show you are some acquisitions, some things that I've picked up along the way. So I didn't do any yarn shopping in Auckland, but we're going back to Auckland, so you never know. When we arrived in the South Island, we stayed with our lovely friend Tracy, and Tracy works at a craft store in Christchurch. She knows a few people in the crafty community in and around the Christchurch area, and she invited one of her friends over for the evening, a lovely lady called Tej, and Tej is the brains behind Whimsy Wood and Wool, and she handcrafts her own drop spindles amongst other things. She also has shawl pins. I think she has some Noster pinners, and I think there are a couple of other bits and pieces. But I was looking on her shop page, so she sells via Felt, which is kind of a Australia, New Zealand version of Etsy, I believe, and I spotted this gorgeous birch spindle and just, yeah, completely fell in love. So we were having a chat, and she said that I could pop over to her house the next day and pick it up, so she didn't have to post it back to me in the UK. So yeah, isn't that just beautiful? And as you can see, I've been spinning already. So Tej gave me a little bit of fibre, which I started off, but then when we got home the evening that I picked up my spindle, Tracy, I'm not entirely sure where I was. I've had a couple of James interruptions. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but a minute ago he wandered out of the bathroom naked after just having a shower, so of course that was a massive distraction. And then he just wandered through on his way out to the veranda for a fag, so yeah, he had put his clothes on in between. I should probably mention that. He's not sat out there naked smoking at the moment. Anyway, back to fibre. So Tracy came home from her shop and she bought me not one, not two, but 3 packets of gorgeous fibre for me to spin. So as you can see, first one is on the spindle, and this spindle, Spindle Like a Dream. It's quite a heavy spindle. I'm trying to spin thin, so it's probably not the best for thin. It would be nice for like heavier sort of chunky weight yarns, but you know. So yeah, I couldn't resist starting with this one. So there's going to be a bit of crinkling, I'm sorry, because these are all still in the packets. But the fibre that I'm using is this one, which is from Ashford, which are, if you have any sort of knowledge about spinning, you'll know that Ashford are very famous for making wheels, and they are New Zealand based. So in Tracy's store, I believe they stock a couple of wheels and some woolen fibre from Ashford. So this beautiful fibre is Merino Silk Sliver, and it's 80% New Zealand Merino, 20% silk. And it's in the colourway Sunset. So it's beautiful, beautiful pinks and oranges with those gorgeous shots of silk throughout. So I had to dig into that bag and start spinning straight away. And then Tracy also, because she said that she didn't really know exactly what colours to get me, she bought me 2 other bags of the Merino Silk Sliver. This one has got lovely blues and greens, and Tracy herself was actually spinning some of this when I was at her house. So it was really fun to be gifted a packet of this one, as we will both have yarns that we've spun from this beautiful colourway, and it's called Salvia. And then the final one is called Poppy Seed, and it's beautiful greys and reds. There you go, I think you can probably see it up there. So I don't want to take it out of the packet because, as you can see from this one, it kind of explodes, and I need to get these all packed up so that I can bring them back to the UK with me. So yeah, I'm really excited to have some really fun fibre to spin with, and all the more special that it was gifted to me by a lovely friend, and also that it's got some New Zealand merino, absolutely perfect souvenir. So yeah, that along with my beautiful Whimsy wooden wool spindle, what a perfect first souvenir to be bringing home from New Zealand. So yeah, I believe that Whimsy Wooden will also have a Facebook page, so you could go and stalk Tej and her beautiful creations over there too, if you wanted to. And the second yarny acquisition that I've made, we went from Christchurch, we went on a day trip to Akaroa, which is a beautiful coastal village town, absolutely stunning views, and really lovely little sort of craft shops. And on the way we stopped at a place called Little River, which I believe is well known as a railway town. There seemed to be like a railway trail walk you could do from there. There wasn't much there. There was a little library along with petrol station, cafe, and a little gift shop. And in the gift shop I spied a beautiful basket of local yarn, so I had to pick myself up a skein of that too. And this is 100% undyed Corriedale, and I've never knit with Corriedale, so that's also a super bonus. And when I looked at the label, when I saw the yarn, I thought about it. I didn't buy it straight away. We went off and had some breakfast at the cafe, and I was thinking to myself, shall I buy it? Obviously we were fairly early on in the trip, and we've got limited amount of space, of luggage space for things to take home. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to go back and have another look at the yarn, and if it's somewhere local to Little River, then I shall take a skein home. If it was something that was a bit more widely available within New Zealand, then I thought I'd leave it behind. But as it happened, it was from a local farm. So I think this is Lochsloy Farm. I'll show you the label. No, that's going to focus or not, probably not. But it's from Lochsloy Farm, Little River, and it just says crafted on Lochsloy Farm, 100% natural undyed Corriedale. There's 120 grams. It comes from fleece number 42, and that's really all of the information that's on the label. It's probably, it looks almost like hand spun to me. It's a bit thick and thin in places. I would say it's probably a sport weight, just looking at the thickness. It's not quite 4-ply, not quite as thick as double knit, but it's got that look about it. I think it might bloom a bit when I knit with it, so I think I could probably get away with it as a double knit. Yeah, beautiful natural colour. When I left, I thought I really kind of kicked myself. There was lots of different colours. There was this colour, there was a lighter colour, there was a darker chocolatey colour, so it's really hard to pick a skein, but there were a few skeins in this colour, and I'm kind of wishing that I'd bought them all, because I think this would have been a fantastic jumper. But, you know, can't change the decisions that I've made, and I can't go back and buy any more. It's a long way back back to Little River from here, and we're not heading back in that direction. But yeah, so I'm not entirely sure what I will do with this yet. If you've got any suggestions, then of course leave me a comment in the down bar below. But yeah, so I think that's probably it for my New Zealand adventures so far. Thank you so much for joining me as I waffle on. I feel a little bit out of practice, so hopefully there hasn't been too many pauses, rambles, ers and ums, and I hope you have enjoyed having a little glimpse at what I've been working on while I've been travelling, and also a little bit of a look at some of the souvenirs that I've picked up along the way. I'm sure there will be a few more souvenirs before I leave, but I no doubt will show you those when I get back to the UK in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and I hope whatever you are up to, wherever you are in the world, that you have an amazing day, and until next time, lots of big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.